I can send it to you if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
Be
Cool.
If you can send that to them.
We'll
Just put it in the forestry, you in the forestry group?
So,
I don't know what's happening.
You in the forestry group?
we're good.
I'm just gonna assume
Alright.
that's right.
So, I'll
If
just
not,
go
it's
reiterate, alright? If there's any like questions of the technical report and like the introduction, stuff like that, please go ask, Lydia or, Dr. Kidd, cause I'm not quite sure what we're doing with you. I do know for the methods, don't forget not only to put down methods for what you did in the field, but also what you did in the office. So i.e. how you built this, you know, say they used Excel and everything else. Yeah. So the first lab is not only just to discuss the difference in sampling size between different ecosystems, but also conducting a species area curve. Right? So this is going to be the figure you have in your tech report, and you're going to have this one figure with 3 species area curves for each one of the sites you're going to. Right? So I'll do that by having your cumulative area in square feet, and this is your cumulative species for each of these sites. So this is not going to be number of new species. Make sure you use cumulative for that. So you're going to highlight these columns here. Insert. I'm going to do a scatter plot here. Now I'm not going to make this like real pretty, so so the curve you're going to measure, these are power functions. So you call it your x-axis is your cumulative area in square feet, and your y-axis should be your cumulative species, since that's your dependent variable. Okay. So here we have our scatter plot of our actual data for each of the sites. I'll go for mix, floodplain, and grass field. Okay. So we're going up here. Can you see it there? Nope, you no. No, it's cut off of the edge. So on the upper left corner under the design tab, you know, add chart elements. We're gonna go there, and there you're going. You're going to go to trend lines. Now we don't have a power frame, so we're going to go to more trend line options. And yeah, we'll do mixed hardware first. You're going to do this for each one of these. So now we have power function right here. So click on that, and make sure when you click on that, you also. So here we have our curve. So can I write this down real quick? Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. So
we're gonna go trend line and power function?
yeah, trend line, more options, and chart elements. So one thing you are going to be supposed to describe in your technical reports is this asymptote. So the line where this curve basically flattens out, because you're not going to expect to get an infinite amount of species inside. You're not going, the more and more area increase, you're not just going to get more and more species at the same rate. Alright, so it's eventually going to flatten out. At the point where it flattens out, that's really the point where you've accurately assessed the number of species there. So it's not going to be the same for each of these forests. So
would that be something we put in like our discussion?
yeah, it'll be in your discussion. So if I have a site that, let's say I have at 50 square feet, it goes real high, but once it goes past 100 and always like 250, it like flattens out a bit, right? So you would accurately assess that you've hit that asymptote, all right? It may be increasing, but not by much. So really, at only 50 square feet, you reached your your total species measured. You've assessed the biodiversity at that point. There's no point to go all the way to 250 square feet. But say a site like this that you don't reach that asymptote at 50 square feet, you do need to go further. Right? So Make sure for each one of these, you display the equation, and also display the R square. Do any of y'all remember what the R square value is? No, so this is big R square, not little r. A little r square would be your diameter. So R square is basically your accounted variance. So every model and every like has some variation in it, and R square basically accounts for how much of the variation within your study is accounted for, i.e. how much can you like, all right, if you have this much variation, it still works. Okay? If it goes too far out, then you just kind of pointless after that. So one thing you're expected, you're going to do a trend line for each one of these. Let's see. So you can change the line itself, so we can make it, you know, bright red, and change it to, you know, a solid line rather than a dashed line. So make sure you adjust that, and
On the legend at the bottom, do we pick one or the other, or do we keep just the trend line, or just?
So you should have a legend for the trend line. You can keep both, but if you just have legend just for the trend lines, that's fine. But make sure that the representation for each one of these variables is different, has a different symbol.
Okay.
So,
And for the name of it, do we just keep it like how it says tower mixed hardwood, or do we do like trend line and mixed hardwood?
I mean,
Or does
I
it-
personally would just keep it as like mixed hardwood, but you can put trend line and mixed hardwood, but
Okay.
I'm certain it won't really matter too much. So for your exercise, so chart title, don't need one. Axes titles, so make sure you have titles for both your axes. And make sure you realize that your y-axis is your cube of species, and that your x-axis is your area.
Sweet.
That's essentially what you need, is make sure each one of these has the equation, has the R square. Make sure you distinguish between the trend lines. Make sure you change the symbology. So, I wouldn't base it all off color, because you're not all only particular. So change the dash type of your trend lines, as well as change the symbology for if you're going to keep these, but change them anyway, even if you don't mark them. That way you can tell which piece of data that trend line's working off of. Yeah. Other than that, I don't really have too much for y'all. After that, if y'all have any questions about this?
You said we're gonna have one trend line for like overall?
No, it's gonna be 3 trend lines.
For each one?
Yeah, so there's gonna be a trend line for the hardwood, the floodplain, and then for the grass field.
That's all one.
But I mean,
It's all-
like,
it's all
I'm talking about
disrupted.
that solid line.
So this solid line is just for mixed hardwood.
Okay.
So let's say I go and add in the trend line.
Oh, so that's just not done yet?
Yeah.
So, okay, so there'd be two other lines, color coordinated or whatever have you.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
So I could select this by simply just, that's something, sorry, so I can go and click on the floodplain, now I've selected this.
And
Go
then you
to
can
edge
create-
elements, and
Create
then
one off of
back to this power, now I have another trend line.
Oh. Thank you.
good to go? How do you get to the trend line again? You right?
It's an add chart elements.
We can't
and
see on the projector.
it's in the upper left corner, and it should be if I go, like if you right click on that.
Add trend line. Type over to.
It has add trend line too. But that's a linear trend line, but you do get to trend line options and power.
Also, it just says something CK area.
Hmm?
For the, first line of data, the title says something CK area. Fully.
Where is it?
To the left, like at the very left.
Oh. Here. See. So, that's your cumulative area. So, if you look on your data sheet, you have, your subplot area,
Right.
that's what that is. Just, I would, your subplot area, that's what you're basing your x-axis off of.
The one to the right is all the choices.
Okay.
Understood?